Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Leasing Highway Season 2. We're super excited today and this whole season to be sponsored by the Apartment Association of Metro Denver. The Apartment Association of Metro Denver represents over 250,000 apartment units in Denver and is back with in-person events like the chili cook-off, golf tournament, and charity auction. So definitely check them out at aamdhq.org to see what they have coming up. And today for the Leasing Highway, we're excited to be joined by Jeff Hawks, and I'm Ian Andrews, and also joined by my co-host Karen Gladney. So Jeff, you're definitely a legend in the industry, and we'll toss it over to you to give a quick introduction of yourself.
Well, thanks, Ian. Thanks, Karen. I'm not sure about the legend part, but I've been doing it a long time and been part of the apartment industry and have been really enjoyed the apartment industry. It was 50 years ago this year that with a partner, I bought a little 3-unit apartment building and ended up beginning that process. 2 years later, I was graduating from college, and a friend of my father's said, "What do you want to do when you graduate?" And I said, "I have no idea." And so he said, "You should get into insurance." And I said, "Okay." And so he gave me a book to study. I drove to the state capitol. I took the test. I funked that test. About a month later, another friend of my father's said, "What are you going to do when you graduate?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "You should get into real estate." And he gave me a book. I studied it. I drove to the state capitol and I passed that test. That was my complete thought process on getting into the apartment industry. I'm really glad I did, but unlike a lot of people who plan out their lives ahead of them, that just kind of came. And then I've been 47 years. It'll be 48 years in November that I've got my real estate license. And I think the first 3 years I did a little bit of everything, residential and some commercial and some apartments. And starting in about 1977, I just focused on apartment sales, and it's been a great run.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the fact that nobody quite knows how they got into or why they got into this industry, but once you're in it, nobody leaves either. Too, it pretty much has you forever. So very similar in your account there, and definitely curious on for your career in this industry. You've had amazing success, and just curious, what do you attribute that to, and all your success throughout your career?
Well, I always tell people that I took the easy career path. I got my real estate license, and 17 years later sold my first large apartment building. And usually when I tell people that, they correct me and say, "You mean 17 months, correct?" And I said, "No, it was 17 years before we did that." And I tell you, what I contribute most of my success to are two people in particular. My wife, one, Cinnamon, is my wife, and we've been married now 16,796 days. But she is a person who pushed me a lot, who believed in me and helped me keep on going when it was really tough, especially back in the 1980s. My other important person, Ian, you may know him. His name is Doug Andrews. He's your father, and we got together about 30 years ago and became partners in the real estate brokerage business, and it was a wonderful relationship for a long time. So I think I owe a lot of it to those two things. One of the things, though, that kept me going or kept me at night trying to do better for my whole career was when Doug and I first got together. There were basically 5 brokerage teams in Denver that did apartments, and we were number 5, and we couldn't get a listing. And somebody you may know, Chuck Sweeney, is a long-time real estate broker in Denver. He owned the market. He did really well, and we could never beat him out for a listing. And then what happened one day is we got a couple listings through a connection we had, and all of a sudden we leapfrogged over, and we sold more that year than anybody else did. And we had an amazing run from there. it was somewhere around 17 years in a row where Doug and I were the top apartment brokers in Denver. And one thing that kept us going was we saw how fast we leapfrogged over Doug, and we didn't want him to leapfrog back over us.
Yeah.
So we always raised the bar. We always worked hard. Both of us came out of a work ethic of getting to the office first and leaving last. And I think some of those kind of things worked well. And I'll tell you the three things that I would focus on a lot as what really worked for me was getting the right staff and team, using technology as much as we possibly could, and really getting coached. We've both Doug and I have been going to coaching classes for 20-some years. We believe in the industry and what's going on. And the last thing I'd say is, I think we did well because we were fair, and we think we were honest, and we're not cutthroat in an industry that sometimes it can be that way in real estate brokerage. And we appreciated, both Doug and I appreciated the secretary and the receptionist as much as we did our other brokers, because they're all part of the team. And sometimes the receptionist is the first person that your client needs. And that can be a big thing. And I'll tell you a quick story. Back in the 80s, we had a client that was just abusive to the receptionist every time he came in the office. And she was very upset about it. And I told her one time, I said, you can tell him off. And she said, no, that's your client. I said, you're more important to me than the client. He may be one client, but you see all of my clients. So I think an attitude of that and putting things together really helped me and helped our team over the years.
Oh, wow. Hearing those stories and those reasons for your success, Jeff, it doesn't surprise me, but yeah, it just warms my heart too and validates all the just amazing things I've thought of you over the years. And I know that our industry has thought of you over the years. I mean, you're just so highly regarded, and it makes sense just hearing those reasons that you account for your success. That's a lot of, those are a lot of positive things, and you've seen so much. What would you say you're most proud of over your career?
Well, most of what I just went through is part of it. I think I'm most proud of marrying well. Choose a partner that can support you and that you can do really well with. And then I think just being fair. I think we've been very fair with our clients, with other brokers, mortgage people, management people, trying to treat everybody the right way. And that tends to allow you to be in the business for a long time.
People certainly are important, and I don't think enough people who find their work match in life, like you and Doug did, realize like just how special that is and how much that matters. And then beyond that, the circle that you have around you, and just how crucial that team is, and people matter. You take care of each other like you take care of your customers, and good things will happen, right?
Right.
So I want to throw out another question that I'm super excited to hear your response to, because anyone I think who knows you well knows you as probably one of the best storytellers. So I'm curious on the flip side of with all your success and what you're proud of. I'm curious on what was one of your biggest F-ups that you've ever had in your career, and what's that story?
Well, obviously, knowing me, I've never done anything wrong.
Exactly.
And that's, if you've read my resume, you'll see that. I think one of the things, and I'm not sure you talk about screwing up in a matter that you did anything on purpose, but you look back and go, boy, that was really a mistake. And everyone always makes the best decision they can at the moment, or else they wouldn't have made that decision. But in that moment, it was not the right decision looking back with the information we have now. I think there's two things that come up to mind in particular, and that is when I was very young in college, whatever, I had a bunch of sales jobs and they taught me a lot of high pressure selling. And when I first got into real estate, I thought my job was to sell everybody an apartment building, whether they needed it or not, or wanted it or not. And as an aside, I truly believe if you sell someone an apartment building who doesn't want it, you go straight to hell when you die. Because that is something that you should never do. It's one of the worst things you could possibly do, is put somebody into an apartment building that doesn't want that lifestyle. What I found was that I had an awakening, and it was probably in the first 8, 6, 7 years of my career. And I can remember the day, it just hit me saying, no, my job is to find people who want apartment buildings and do the best job I can of helping them get the apartment building. And that is totally different than selling them something they may not want. And so that was a big shift for me. However, I have used the sales training I got way back then to help people who really want the apartment building and should get it, who are struggling with the decision to pull the trigger. There are some ways of helping those people along to put that together. And the other thing, that's one. The other thing that's really interesting for us, we tried to open an office in Salt Lake City. We had an office for brokerage for apartments in Denver and in Phoenix, very successful. And we just said, we can do exactly what we're doing in Denver and do it in Salt Lake City. And we opened the office, started going, and it was a disaster. And we looked at it and said, what the heck happened? I mean, we've been doing this for 40 years. We should know what we're doing. And I think the term is hubris. But basically, we thought we were successful just because of us. And we could go do something just because of who we were and be successful. And things like the market or size of the city, different kind of clientele, different kind of relationships are all different. And I think one of the most important lessons I learned was not to kind of believe your own press clippings, but take a hard look at why things are successful. And it might not be what you think. It might be the market helps you. And the reverse is true too. When you lost something, it might not have been you. It might have been something else. So take a real strong look at it. And those are the two things I would look back and try to change.
Yeah.
I think we all could take a dose of that, and just, especially when you lose out on something, you just want to beat yourself up. And it's always good to have the check yourself moment and see if, of course, look in the mirror and see what you could have done better. But you're right. It's not always you. And then also on the flip side, be careful of how much of your own Kool-Aid you drink. So, well, we'll pop to our first commercial break here, and we'll be back on the other side with Jeff. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
Meet Drew. She's a photographer living in Chicago and is currently looking for a new apartment. She's found a few places she likes, but isn't sure which one is the best fit. That's when Drew discovered RentGrata. RentGrata allowed Drew to talk to Ashley, a resident of the building she was considering. After talking to Ashley, Drew knew it was the right place for her, so she decided to move in. Today, Drew found a new home and Ashley made some referral money. But with RentGrata, it doesn't stop there. When this conversation data is combined with AI machine learning intelligence, RentGrata can provide new insights that allow property managers to get a better sense of what renters want. And that means a better renter experience for all. Welcome your residents, reach them with RentGrata.
I like the jingle there. I got to tell you, Jeff, your answer on the biggest F-ups was honestly the most perfect answer you could give. And it reminded me of like when you're coached in interviewing too, you turn your biggest negative into a positive. I mean, I feel like I just was schooled and learned a lesson from your mistakes, and that was special. So thank you for that. Kind of along the line.
So then I didn't F up on my answer?
No, you didn't.
Oh, good. That's good.
There are no F-up answers, right? But and it's not this. This isn't along the same lines. This is we see a lot in this industry, and there are, and for you, having walked buildings through due diligence or coming to look at something to put it up for sale, you've got to have had several, I would think, but that moment of like, OMG, are you kidding me? Is this what I'm seeing right here? Any fun story on the biggest like shocker moment that you've seen?
Boy, we could talk about this for hours. It is
A whole segment.
truly amazing. I mean, you never cease to me. I would, we do when we sell a building, you basically walk through, all 200 units.
Right.
And the things everybody who's watching, if they're in the apartment sector, they know exactly what's going on, and it's pretty rough. I went to a different direction. You asked me about this question, and that the question is, have you seen some things that said, "Are you kidding me?" And I went to a different place. In 1978, all the property taxes for apartments doubled immediately without doing anything. In 1986, they changed the tax law completely, which left basically every apartment building I was working on worth nothing. In 1999, they tried to pass an Amendment 24 to change zoning laws, and they did that right as the tech wreck happened and 9/11. And if you add all those things up, we lost 70,000 jobs in Denver and built 21,000 units, and that started that whole crash that we had in the early 2000s. In 2004, this is the biggest one. Whenever you look at renters, it always has been in the past that you get out of school and you start renting, and you kind of rent, I call them a C building. It might be an older 70s property or something. You go for the cheaper rent. And then you make a little bit of money and you do a little better and you get to a B building. And then you go to an A building, and then you go out and buy a house. In 2004, the number one reason for leaving your apartment unit, which was a 1970s building, was to buy a condo. That was just incredible. And then, of course, 2008, the complete crash of our financial system. And we can't forget 2020 with not being able to evict somebody.
Right.
What those are, every one of those, are unintended consequences by government agencies. Every one that I've seen in my career, there have been government policies or programs which have basically, they had no idea what the unintended consequence would be. And you sit there and go, I can't believe somebody would do that.
Yeah, your angle is actually better, and just as OMG and shocker. So those are all really impactful examples to share over a storied period,
Well, if you want to go the other direction, I did go to a meeting one time in Las Vegas of owners of apartment buildings, and there was 12 people around the table. And at the end of the dinner, the person said, best walkthrough story. And you went around the table and we could talk for a half an hour on the stories I heard that night.
I bet.
That'd probably be a good mashup for us to have too, as a question. I'm sure there's some unbelievable stories there. So switching gears a little bit here, Jeff. Let's. I'd love to get a little bit of insight into what life is like outside of the industry for you now. You've had such a career and been on stage at econ conference events and board meetings, and so what's a day in the life like for Jeff outside of the industry?
Well, it's not too exciting. I love work, and we were there early in the morning, late at night, working straight through for years and years and years and years. In fact, I told a story just today that when I have 3 boys, and when they were little, I would pack them up in the back of my Subaru wagon. We'd drive around Denver cataloging apartment buildings because there were no databases. You couldn't buy a database of apartment buildings, so you had to drive the streets, find them, put the addresses down, take a photo. And I'd put the kids in the car. They were probably 3, 6, and 9 years old. And I would say every 7-Eleven we'll stop and get something off the bottom shelf, which was a nickel. Well, you know how hard it is to drive around Denver avoiding all 7-Elevens? It's really tough. But that's kind of what I did on the side sometimes. But I believe as far as me, being a husband and a father, grandfather, I was a big soccer coach for a long time. My 3 boys played soccer for a total of 19 years. I was a board member of a church and of Arapahoe House, which was the drug and alcohol centers in Colorado. And so I have a lot of things like that are fun. 15 years ago, we moved from Littleton after our kids moved out to Georgetown, Colorado. And so for the last 12 years, I commuted to downtown Denver and just really enjoyed the mountains and going back and forth. So nothing exciting, but, fun time. Fun time in Colorado.
I think all that's really special. What a neat way to combine family time and work with doing avoiding 7-Elevens and cataloging apartments. Who knew?
Exactly.
And gosh, I think everybody, at least people that live here on the Front Range, would love to be able to retire or move into the mountains. And somebody once told me, because you love work so much, you're just at work optional stage now, so you're still can work
right.
it down. What about this, Jeff? If you had a magic wand, which right now, Ian mentioned you on stage, and I remember watching you all those years up presenting all the data, and you were the first person that made me super excited, honestly, about data. Even my college professors couldn't do it. You were just, the way you delivered it all was so intoxicating. So I'm picturing you up on that stage with a magic wand right now. What would you invent if you had a magic wand for us?
I would have 2 things. One is I would love to invent affordable workforce housing. I think there's a real issue, and I think it's hurting our country to have people that are working for a living and really aren't able to get into housing that can sustain them. I know I've said this on the stage a couple of times, but when I graduated college in 1974, I was hoping to make $8,000 to $10,000 a year. That's what a college graduate made at that time. But you could build an apartment unit for $12,000. Today, a college graduate, I'm sure, wants to make $40,000, $50,000 a year. It's $250,000 to build an apartment unit. The gap is too big to allow someone not to spend every dime they make on housing. And it doesn't allow them to get out and enjoy life, to become a middle class, and to work at different jobs they may want to work at. So that's number one. But the best answer is I might take a look at the federal government. If I had a magic wand, I might say start over. And there's a Indian casino in Connecticut called Mohegan Sun, and it's a huge casino. It's rivals anything as in Las Vegas, and it's run by the tribal elders, and it's doing better than almost any other Indian casino in the country. And they have a different idea, that every time an idea comes to the board, the elders say, am I making a decision today that will make my descendants proud of me? I think we've lost touch with that in our government. I think that too much is going on with different things. So I do a little magic wand and start from scratch and try to get back to basics. I think that would help a lot because of our unintended consequences that we're dealing with.
That's a good one.
Absolutely. Well, let's take one more quick break here, and then we'll be back with you on the other side.
Welcome to your beautiful new apartment home here at Gables Point 14. As you can see, we're featuring this beautiful 1-bedroom den.
right, welcome back. So yeah, I want to throw another question your way here, Jeff. You've seen this industry from every angle, and curious for, what are some of the reasons that you see people rising up, and then properties succeed in general. So for all those on-site teams out there and people, what's your advice there?
Well, it's an amazing industry. I've seen some of the best people at what they do lose everything, and some of the worst owners make it like a fortune.
Yeah.
But if you go in the long term, I think what you'll find is if people treat people fairly, work hard, learn all they can about the industry. That's one of the most important things. And surround yourself with people like you and really work together. I've seen those people really come out on top.
Yeah, that's again, good, helpful information and something we all should follow. I certainly feel lucky for the people I'm surrounded by. Jeff, what would you say is one of your favorite quotes out there for us to live by or remember?
Well, you sent me this question, and it's hard to come up with a quote because there's a lot of wonderful ones. I was saying if you go through my career, obviously the first quote was "Fake it till you make it." That's how it looked in the beginning, and then I realized that "fake it till you make it" really means to visualize something, or that you can't get somewhere unless you really see yourself there. So it's more like anything the mind of man can conceive, it can achieve, like Napoleon Hill. The newest quote I love is "Never fail due to lack of effort, because effort requires no skill." But one of the things I want to share with you, which is interesting, it was actually a true story, but I'll put it in the form of a quote. You walk into your boss and the employee says, "I can't sleep at night worrying that you're going to fire me." And the boss looks at the employee and says, "You should work so hard and do your job so well that I won't be able to sleep at night worrying that you're going to quit."
Wow.
I like it. Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
So somehow I knew you were going to come up with several great ones right there. So yeah, no, those are all amazing.
I may go off the rail a little bit here, but the best quote in history is, "I swear by my life and the love of it that I will never live for the sake of another man, nor ask another man to live for mine." That's from Atlas Shrugged. That's said by John Galt.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be there to see that. All right.
I can't. I also have to say too, I can't tell you, like, growing up, how many quotes I have that have been given to me where the line is, "Oh, this is one of Jeff's quotes. This is a quote from Jeff," and I probably have about 50 of those from my dad that are ingrained in my memory. So yeah, your words were branded into my brain at a very young age. So,
Did it help?
well, I mean, it got me somewhere. I don't know.
So far, so good.
Okay. So, yeah, exactly.
The story's still being written, Jeff.
yeah, exactly. Well, I know we're running low on time, so want to jump into our walk-off question here too, that we give every single person who joins our podcast, and in that. What advice would you give to someone just starting out in the industry? And I feel fortunate because I feel like I probably got this advice from you when I was starting out in the industry. So yeah, let's hear it.
Run away as fast as you can.
Apparently, I didn't hear it.
This industry is not for everybody, no question. But it's an amazing industry if you want to jump in there and do it. And I always tell people, try to get on a really good team or have a mentor. Surround yourself with people that know what they're doing so you can watch what they're doing. learn all you can. Get back to the basics of reading about your industry, going to seminars, now to YouTube, now anything you can do to kind of keep on going. And I always tell people to be the first one there, the last one out, do whatever it takes. And it's amazing where they can lead. And go ahead and make a plan for where you want to go, but be flexible because usually you won't end up there. But just get it going and put it together, and I think and make it fun.
Well said. Perfect walk-off question and answer, Jeff. Thank you so much. The time has flown by yet again, and we've just been super appreciative to have you with us today. Happy Tuesday, everybody, and we'll be back next Tuesday. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everyone. Bye.